Okay, one of the hot topics of the moment is mandatory pre-commitment in regards to pokies and pokey reform. Now, as I mentioned, mandatory pre-commitment is the preferred measure of pokies reform that Andrew Wilkie wants to bring in. And Andrew Wilkie is a key player in this whole debate, as the Gillard government in Australia is hanging there by a thread. They've got just one seat holding them in power. It's a hung parliament, and Andrew Wilkie has basically said if the government doesn't honour their deal that they made with him to bring about these pokies reforms and mandatory pre-commitment, his support for the government's gone. So it's potentially government toppling this issue. Now, Clubs Australia have been putting out a massive fight against it. Of course, they're protecting their interests, and I guess they would argue the interests of their club members. They're, I think, personally, probably spreading a lot of misinformation and, misleading information. For example, they've been saying that mandatory pre-commitment is not going to do anything to help problem gamblers, yet in the same breath they're telling us that it's going to cost the clubs a fortune. And James Packer come out at the Crown AGM just last week and made the similar sort of statements. Now, if it's going to cost you a fortune, well, where's that money coming from? I guess it's coming from some of those problem gamblers. That's got to be the aim. I mean, they're going to have to take some sort of hit to the bottom line. At the end of the day, $12 billion a year is spent in Australia on pokies. That's a hell of a lot of money. And, the clubs argue that they put a lot of money back into the community and stuff like that. But, I mean, at what cost? I mean, there's a human cost. There was a study done at the Alfred Hospital in 2010, and that showed that 1 in 5 of the suicide attempt admissions to the casualty section, to the emergency section of the Alfred, 1 in 5 of those people said they had a problem with gambling. Now, federal opposition leader Tony Abbott has weighed in finally on the pokies reform debate. He's been fairly quiet up until the last week. In fact, he made a speech to a very anti-pokies reform audience. Now, Tony Abbott has himself said in the past, if his remarks are not carefully scripted, they should not be taken quite so seriously if they're in the heat of debate. Now, I don't know how scripted these remarks were, but I think they sound fairly scripted.
I also know that anything that smacks of the nanny state will not be welcome by my party room. So when this legislation comes before the Parliament, I predict that we will oppose it. And if this legislation is passed by the Parliament, and if we then subsequently form a government, I predict we will rescind it. That's what I predict.
The thing is, what is given these people is a big definite maybe. What I mean by that is, well, he's making a promise for something maybe to happen. So he's making a prediction. So he predicts that if they got into government, that they would overturn these laws, they'd rescind these laws. But he predicts that. He's not promising that. Now, does that mean he hasn't spoken to the rest of the people in the coalition and he doesn't know what their opinions are and he has sort of just good old Tony shooting from the hip? Or is it a case of, well, we know we're not going to rescind it because we know this is actually going to do something positive, but in the sake of pleasing the people that I'm speaking to and, at the most cynical, I guess, buying a few more votes, I'm going to tell you guys that I'm going to rescind it. I don't know. Is it the scripted remark or is it a off the cuff remark? I don't know. As I said, it's a definite maybe. It's all a bit confusing at the moment. I think something needs to be done. The Greens got an interesting solution, maybe a little less complicated than what Wilkie's is. I'm sure we're going to talk about this in probably some more videos. So if you want to comment, leave me your thoughts. I'll be interested to see what you got to say. Cheers, guys.